Hello guys, this is Razel here, and here is episode 2 of Italian grammar tutorials, and the topic we're going to be discussing today is il passato prossimo and the passato remoto. What I find confuses a lot of people is that they seem to think that passato prossimo and passato remoto are basically the same. Technically speaking, that's not true, but in practice, it often ends up that way. But you need to understand that they were not the same tense initially. So, passato prossimo literally translates to the near past, which ends up translating it as the present perfect, which is I have done. And because it's the near past, it still has continuing relevance in the present. Whereas the passato remoto, which is the remote past, translates as the simple past or the preterite, which is I did. And that has less relevance in the present. So, and the passato remoto has become dated and kind of literary in its usage. And the only time you really need to know it is like when you're reading fiction or very formal or old writing in Italian. Passato remoto is pretty uncommon in the north, but in the south it's sort of common. Sometimes it ends up replacing the passato prossimo. Other times like they'll use it in conjunction. How it's used, like how far south you are or whatever, it's not really consistent. So you just have to figure it out for yourself, like when you go to the south. So yeah, let's continue onward. So here's the timeline we're going to use to illustrate how these tenses fit into our perception of time. There's the present, the future, and the past, which is our focus. We're going to draw a line right there to show where the present is, and then we're going to put markers to show their distance from the present. There's the passato remoto, and there's a passato prossimo. Now this third one is called il trapassato prossimo or il trapassato remoto, which is the past perfect, and that is just to show like that it has the least relevance, almost no relevance to the past, to the present. I mean, in comparison to passato remoto, which has just a little bit of relevance to the present, whereas passato prossimo has the most because it happened really recently in comparison. So this is just to illustrate. So here's how to conjugate it. You take the present tense of avere or essere, and we'll get to the rules on how to use those in a couple of slides. And then you take the past participle of a verb. Here's the tables for avere and essere in case you don't remember. And there are endings. So for an are verb, you would just drop the are and add ato. So for example, a verb like parlare would be parlato, and likewise a verb like sedere would be seduto, and sentire sentito. So you just put those the conjugation, the present tense of present conjugation of avere or essere, and then put the past participle afterward. So an example would be noi abbiamo mangiato, which means we have eaten or we ate in most dialects of Italian. So yeah, let's move on. Alright, so as I've noted in this slide, most are verbs are regular, so you don't have much to worry about there, but there are quite a few regular verbs when it comes to ere verbs. Sedere is one of the few that I can think of right now. Ire verbs like sentire, they're kind of like the middle ground. And you'd use these basically as a replacement for the passato prossimo when you're like referring to something that happened once in the past. So if I said tu parlasti means you spoke. So yeah, and it may not have very much relevance in the present, but it's still it happened. It was happened and completed in the past. So yeah. So now we're going to discuss the usage differences. Alright, so Passato Prossimo, like I said before, has continuing relevance in the present because it was in the near past. And you use avere when the verb is transitive and essere when the verb is intransitive. Transitive means a verb that takes a direct object, such as to eat. And when you eat something, it takes a direct object. But as essere, you'd use a verb that is intransitive, such as sedere, which means to sit. You don't. The verb to sit does not take a direct object. So yeah, and then for the passato remoto, the verb is relatively far in the past. It doesn't have too much importance in the present. And this is just a little side note. Certain verbs change their meaning in the past. So verbs like sapere, to know, or conoscere, which is to like be familiar with or to meet somebody for the first time, or potere, those are verbs that change meaning slightly in the past. So, for example, sapere in the past, in the passato remoto, or in the passato prossimo in spoken Italian and standard Italian anyway, basically means to find out, because there's few other ways to really define knowing at one instant and time, and that's basically to find something out, to discover, or that some fact. And yeah, so that's all I have for this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll try to get them to them as quickly as I can. I do have other stuff to do, so please don't be offended if I don't respond for like a day or two. I highly recommend that you download my guide, Scoprendo l'Italiano, if you want a little more detailed instructions on how to use certain verbs and just how to learn the Italian language in general. I've linked my blog and like where you can download my guide in the description. So I hope you guys enjoyed this PowerPoint, and I hope it was helpful. So arrivederci.